Today we're going to talk about how to plan a Disney World trip when you have a baby or toddler in your group. So we all know by now, right, that Disney World planning is tricky for everyone, no matter who you are, who's in your group, adults only, kids, no kids, etc. But when you are traveling with a baby or a toddler, there's a whole extra layer of considerations that you have to plan for. So we're going to get into a lot of those different areas in this video, and that includes things like stroller or no stroller. How are you choosing your hotel? Where are you going to eat? Which attractions do you go on? Do you tell them beforehand or do you surprise them, etc.? So we're going to get into all that stuff because we have a lot of empathy and experience with this kind of planning, and we want to help you to make it easier. Let's first talk about things that you can do way before your trip even takes place. The first of those is deciding if you even want to go with a baby or a toddler. And this is a tricky one because it kind of depends on how often you're going to get to take a trip. If your family wants to do a once-in-a-lifetime trip, then we don't suggest going when your little one is a baby or a toddler because they likely won't remember it, and they'll likely have a little bit more fun when they're a little older and can do more things and remember it. However, if you are going to be able to go multiple times in their childhood, then take them in their baby and toddler years. They'll never be at that stage again. And so there's a certain magic, sorry to use that word, it's overused in this niche, but there's a certain magic to what they believe or experience at that age. And sometimes it's just for the parents, you know, it's not necessarily for the kids' memories because they likely won't remember it, but it can be for the parents to have joy through their children. So if you get to go multiple times, by all means, start in the baby and toddler years. So then let's say that you decided that you do want to go with your baby or toddler. That's probably why you're watching this, and you're trying to figure out when to tell them. This is a tricky one because this age doesn't have a concept of time. Babies obviously aren't going to know anything, but toddlers, if you tell them, are going to think, is it now? Is it now? Is it now? And so what we often suggest to people with little ones is that they get their kids involved in planning without them knowing it. So you watch attraction videos on YouTube, or you get a book like the Birnbaum's book for kids, which kind of goes over some of the things that are available, that kind of thing. So you kind of get them involved passively without them knowing there's an actual trip plan. And then maybe as you get a little bit closer to your trip, 10 days out, 20 days out, whatever number you think is appropriate, then maybe let them know and do a countdown so they have a concept of how many days are left before you go. So that seems to be kind of a sweet spot with kids in this age, so they know ahead of time, but not too far ahead of time. Another thing you can do while you are waiting, in addition to the attraction videos, is obviously watching things on Disney Plus that the attractions are based on. So this can be another way to sort of passively get them involved in the planning without them knowing it. You're just having, you know, a Friday night movie or a lazy Saturday where you're watching Disney Plus, and so by the time they get there on their trip, the characters will be familiar to them. Another thing to consider before you go on your trip is how you're going to pack specifically for your baby or toddler. Now, there is a good chance you're going to know a lot of the things that would be in your diaper bag, for instance, but there are a few things that you may not anticipate that you might want to add. We have a whole packing list on the website, and there's a whole section specifically for babies and toddlers. And it includes a few things like Post-it notes to put on automatic flush toilets. So if you have a potty training toddler, this can be a godsend because the auto flush toilets are really loud and can be very scary, and it would be a shame to spook them the first day of your trip and then they never want to go again. So when we have little ones, we would throw those in our bag. You also might want to throw in large Ziploc bags in case, you know, clothes get wet. Maybe include a change of clothes in the Ziploc bag so that you can do that. Maybe a change of shoes in case the shoes get wet, and also consider child-friendly sunblock. A lot of parents I know like to use the spray because it's easier to apply, but you want to make sure you have this with you during your trip. In addition to all those things, you obviously want to make sure that your kids are taken care of while you're in the park. When I had little ones, I always carried a really big backpack full of activities and snacks. So you want to make sure to have that because you are going to wait in some lines, hopefully not too many, but you are going to wait in some lines, and you want to keep them busy and have their like drinks and snacks available so that they can stay as comfortable as possible while you're on your trip. And lastly, one thing that we really like doing, and this is going to be more for toddlers and kids than it is for babies, but it is to create an itinerary that they know what's going to happen during the trip. Now, most toddlers cannot read, so we will often use graphics that represent the days so that they can see, like today it's like the castle from Magic Kingdom, so they know they're going there, or they're dining at a certain restaurant. So it's like an itinerary that is based more on pictures than it is on words, but especially if you have a child that wants to know what's happening, this can be super helpful to let them know what to expect during your trip. Now let's talk about choosing where to stay with a baby and toddler. And to us, there's just several different factors to consider. Obviously, budget's going to be one of them. They're value moderate deluxe resorts, so budget may dictate it. Another is transportation. With the advent of the Skyliner system, where you can roll your stroller right on and off, we think that's a huge perk for families that are going to be using strollers throughout the trip. There is also the monorail, which is another type of transportation you can roll your stroller right on. Other resorts are going to rely more on buses, where you have to collapse your stroller every time you get on and off, which can be very inconvenient. And so we tend to prioritize the resorts that have the Skyliner or monorail access, but transportation is definitely a consideration. Another is dining options. So all the resorts have different dining options, and with little ones, you might want to think extra hard about this because you might want to be able to get something quickly and easily for them. For this reason, sometimes we think the values are a better idea because they have food courts. And so you can easily, go down there, get a slice of pizza or whatever it is, and have something very casual and quick, versus the deluxe resorts, which do have quick service locations where you can grab something, but it's not quite as easy or as fast sometimes as the food courts are. So dining options are definitely a consideration when choosing your resort. Another is theming. So some of the resorts have super fun theming. Some of them have a tropical theme, this kind of thing. Some of them are more formal, right? So it's fun to kind of play with the different themings at the resorts and see what's going to work for your family. The value resorts tend to be more colorful and fun and very, very kid-friendly. Moderate resorts tend to be beautiful, but not necessarily as kid-friendly. Deluxe resorts all vary, but can have things, like the Polynesian resort is that tropical theme, which many families will like because they want to be outside enjoying the water and the fun pool and the beach and that kind of thing. But you just have to figure out the theming and what's most important to you. And the last thing to consider is the room types. So for instance, how many people are in your group? Do you need a pack and play? Where is it going to fit? If you need more space, the deluxe resorts are going to have more square footage for these kind of things, in addition to like a pull down bed in most of them. And so these are different things to consider. Value resorts offer a lot for families with young kids, but you do have to consider the space there because they are the smallest of all of the rooms. So if the size of your group is going to be uncomfortable in those smaller rooms, then you might want to consider another level of resort. So having said all that, I want to give you our recommendations in each category for the resorts. In the value category, we like Pop Century and Art of Animation the most. Going back to the Skyliner comment that I made earlier, these two are on the Skyliner. So it's really nice that you can get to Hollywood Studios and Epcot on the Skyliner, which means you can roll your stroller right on without having to get onto a bus. In addition, if you do have to ride a bus, those resorts have buses that go directly to the parks that like Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom. And so that can be really convenient, so you don't have to stop at other resorts on the way or have multiple internal stops. They're also very colorful and fun and have food courts. The Art of Animation resort has mostly suites, so if you want more space and multiple beds, then that can be really convenient. They also have kitchenettes in them, so you have more of a refrigerator, a small microwave, and that can be really convenient if you want to heat something up or store something more easily than you can at the other resorts. So Art of Animation and Pop Century are in the value category. The resorts in the moderate category are beautiful. They're like really well landscaped and the architecture is really nice and all that, but they aren't necessarily fun or colorful. But in this category, if you want to stay, we do recommend Caribbean Beach Resort. It is the hub of the Skyliner system, so it's a direct shot to get to Hollywood Studios and Epcot on the Skyliner. It also has a really fun pool and some great on-site dining options. There is an island there that has a playground. So of all of the moderates, it is the most kid-friendly, and that's the one we would pick if you are wanting to book in this category. In the deluxe category, there are a few different options that could be really fun for your family. Animal Kingdom Lodge is a resort that's beautiful and has animals right there. It's also one of the least expensive in the deluxe category, so that could be a good option. Just be aware that the transportation there, Disney transportation, is all buses. So if you're okay with the buses, then that might be a good choice. The Contemporary Resort is probably one of our top favorites, partially because it has the pathway that goes directly to Magic Kingdom. A lot of families with little ones are going to spend more time at Magic Kingdom than the other parks, so the ability to walk there and not have to mess with the transportation is really nice. It does also have the monorail, which is a really convenient thing. It has a character meal that is right in the resort. Plus, it has balconies, and if you are back and the kids are in bed, then you can go out to the balcony and still watch fireworks and sort of participate in things that are going on at Disney World, even if you're not out and about. So the Contemporary, a great option. A couple other good choices in the deluxe category include Beach Club Resort, which has walking access to both Epcot and Hollywood Studios, and it also has the best pool on site. Some families feel like the pool is very overwhelming with little ones because there's a whole lot to do there, and it's really kind of hard to keep your eyes on them, but it is a great pool. And lastly, the Polynesian Resort, which has easy monorail access to both Epcot and Magic Kingdom, as well as a fun pool and the tropical theming there. So there's some deluxe options for you. On the topic of resorts, if you are traveling with a little one that will need special bedding accommodations, Disney can help in this category. You can ask for bed rails or pack and play. They are available by request. They're not guaranteed, but they are available to request, and you can have that in your room. You could obviously also bring your own and use those. We have done pack and plays in every single resort just to show like how they fit and sort of how the space works. And so if you want to check out our information on that, then feel free, because we think that's something worth considering, especially if you want to be able to put the pack and play in sort of its own separate area and still be able to like watch TV and talk without disturbing your little one. But you can definitely request those items from Disney or bring your own. Now let's talk general touring advice when you have little ones in your group, starting with how many days to spend in each park. Now, with the advent of the Park Pass reservation system, you have to decide ahead of time where you're going to be each day of your trip. We've always advised that people decide this on their own, but now you have to in order to get into that park. And so you have to pick like how many days do I even want to spend in each place. And as I mentioned earlier, families with little ones often want to spend the most time in Magic Kingdom because there's the most things for them to do there. And so we would definitely suggest allowing multiple days there during your trip. Secondly is Hollywood Studios. It is often very popular with little ones. They have Disney Junior characters, a lot of things that little ones tend to like. So we would suggest Hollywood Studios as a must-do. Thirdly, Animal Kingdom. Lots of animals there and attractions that kids often like. And then fourthly, Epcot. So it kind of depends on the length of your trip, how many days. So if you have 5 days, then we would suggest 2 days at Magic Kingdom and 1 at the other parks. If you have a trip over 5 days, we would highly suggest putting a rest day right in the middle that is not in a park, so that you have more flexibility and more downtime. It's very overstimulating and exhausting, so it's nice to kind of break it up. Another thing to decide is if you're gonna use a stroller. Now, many toddlers are done with strollers. They prefer to just walk on their own, but we want to warn you that you may want to bring the stroller back for a Disney World trip. Unless your toddler can walk 10 miles a day comfortably, you're gonna want the stroller. They can not only get off their feet a little bit, but you can have the stroller available to carry your stuff. They can obviously take a nap, those kind of things. So even if you're out of the stroller phase at home, definitely reconsider it for Disney World. We have lots of information on this because if you don't want to bring your own, you can rent it from local companies. You can rent one from Disney in the parks, etc. You have lots of different options here, but we would strongly urge you to consider using a stroller for your trip. The third thing to consider is transportation. I have mentioned the Skyliner and monorail previously because it's really nice to be able to walk on without having to collapse your stroller. Buses will require you to collapse it. The boats vary in this way. Some of the boats, depending on their size, are going to allow you to roll right on. Some of them will require you to collapse. So if you are relying on Disney transportation, just make sure you know how it works and maybe make your choices based on what transportation is available, getting to and from your hotel or dining, etc. Another thing to know while you're touring the parks is that baby care centers are available, and they're not just for babies. You can take your toddlers and young kids in there as well. They are usually adjacent to the first first aid centers, and they provide quiet space with basic supplies that you need for little ones. And you shouldn't be afraid to go there to get away from the stimulus and the hot and the crowds, and to eat, to just have a break, whatever you need to do, change a diaper, all of that. So just know baby care centers are available. Look for them on the map. They're usually right next to the first aid center. Now let's talk about the actual attractions in the park, which is to me one of the trickiest parts about traveling with a little one, because you don't know ahead of time what they're going to be into. So you may think, oh, they'll be fine with the little coasters, or they'll be fine with the dark, and then you get there and they are not. And the opposite can be true as well. They may be really into something that you did not anticipate. So this can be a very sort of tricky category. So one of the first things that we recommend, if you can, or if you're interested in doing this, is to let your little ones kind of lead the way and let them decide what they are into. If they go on a ride and they really like it, see if you can go on it again and again and again and again, which is tricky with Genie Plus, and it's a whole separate category. But if you can, do that. If they are afraid of the dark, then obviously you're going to have to adjust your plans for other rides that are in the dark. When it comes to not knowing how intense of a ride they're going to be into, start small and work up. For instance, roller coasters, a Barnstormer is the easiest of those. So start there and see how that goes. And if they're comfortable, you can kind of work your way up. You are going to run into height requirements. And so obviously babies and toddlers are going to be affected by height requirements and not be able to ride. So be prepared for that. You can use rider switch. So if you have an older child or adults who want to ride the rides, even if the little ones can't, you can make use of the rider switch system, which allows an adult to stay with the little one while the rest of the group ride. You just approach the cast member at the attraction, tell them you want a rider switch pass, and the first group can go ride, and when they get off, the second group can board with the rider switch pass. So these are all different options that you have. Even if you have a little one in your group, you can still ride these rides that have the height requirements. I mentioned that you never know what your kid's going to be into, but we do want to warn you about some things that might be scary. In particular, I always call Animal Kingdom the park that parents accidentally traumatize their kids with, because you might think things are going to be super benign and easy for them based on the name of the attraction or the height requirement on it, and then be surprised at how intense it actually is. So at Animal Kingdom specifically, there is the dinosaur attraction, which can be very scary because dinosaurs jump out at you. It is less intense now than it used to be, but it still could be scary. Expedition Everest is a huge coaster with a lot of intense moments, but the height requirement isn't super, super high. A lot of 4 or 5-year-olds are tall enough to ride it, and so they will go on it because they're tall enough and then be really traumatized by how intense it was. The third thing in Animal Kingdom is it's tough to be a bug, which sounds like a really cute show, but it's often very scary. And almost every time I've been to it, there have been kids screaming and crying and having to leave. So it just kind of depends what your child's sensitivities are. Those are just 3 examples at Animal Kingdom of attractions that could or may not scare little ones, but every park has these, and we have a list that includes things that are in the dark or a little bit more intense than you might expect, and so you might want to review that before your trip. And of course, while touring, you are going to want to strongly consider using the Genie Plus system. Most of the rides that are the hardest to get have height requirements, so your little one may not be eligible to ride it, but you might be able to use Genie Plus for a lot of other things that your child can ride. We have huge lists of things that we think are the best for each child in the parks, and so you might want to consider reviewing that list to kind of put together a plan or a to-do list before you head to Disney World. And lastly, let's talk about dining choices. This can be a tricky one because there are a lot of choices and some of them are really hard to get. So there are table service restaurants that take reservations ahead of time, which you will likely want to do for those really hard to get ones, particularly character meals. There are also quick service locations, which you don't have to have reservations for. And many families with little ones prefer this because you don't have to have reservations and therefore you're not as locked into a schedule. They do tend to be a little bit faster, so that has its appeal as well. However, I did a poll on Instagram a while back where I asked families that have little ones and have been recently what their favorite choices were. And they said generally that they really liked dining options that had entertainment built in because it made it easier to get through a whole meal. There are certain character meals that seem to be better than others. The favorite by far seemed to be Garden Grill, which is actually our favorite character meal at Disney World. The service is fast, the food is good, the characters come around frequently, and so it just tends to be a great one. Some locations that may be a surprise to you are things like Biergarten, which is the German buffet at Epcot. It has music that takes place while you eat, and so that can be really interesting for kids to have something to listen to or to watch. And the German buffet allows you to kind of sample German food without committing to a certain entree from the menu. So there's a whole list of table service options like that that combine like good food, entertainment to keep the kids entertained, and feel free to check that out at the link in the description. I mentioned earlier that quick service is sometimes preferable because you don't have to be locked into a dining reservation and it can be faster. Another perk is that most quick service locations offer mobile ordering. So your family can gather around and everyone can get their order in, and then one person can go pick it up while another person, if you have another adult in your group, can go get a table and keep the kids with them. And so sometimes that works out even better than the table service restaurants. So you have to figure out what you want to do for your group. Likely you will end up doing a combination of the two, but it's super helpful to know that ahead of time and maybe even review the menus so that you know what you want to get. So that's a lot of information for families with little ones. I hope it has been helpful. If you have questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, but there's going to be a lot of links as well in the description to help you read more and to learn more about all these topics. So I hope that's been helpful. Thanks for watching.